How's it going, guys? Welcome to my UFC Fight Night Silva vs Bisping predictions. I've just woke up, so forgive me if I sound a little bit dopey. Um, got a coffee anyway. Hopefully that will help. This is a cool event. I reckon there's some good fights here, some decent little scraps on the prelims as well that could probably be on main cards of other UFC fight nights. So I'm looking forward to this, and it's also really good that I haven't got to stay up at a crazy hour to watch the fights, because normally they start at 3 a.m. in England, the main card, and that can be very tiring. You know, especially if you've got to be up early on a Monday. It's pretty crazy. Sometimes you've got to wake up to watch them or stay up to watch them, and it really messes with you. So it's good to be able to watch them at a normal hour. This will be at the O2 Arena. But I think the Anderson Silva and Bisping bout, it's perfect for both of the guys at this stage of their careers. You know, they're both sort of, lost in recent years, especially, like Silva lost against Weidman twice. He come back, faced Nick Diaz, beat him, but tested positive for whatever he tested positive for. He's talking about Viagra and stuff like that. Bisping's been very, he's been very verbal about that, and he was at the weigh-ins yesterday. So, will that go against Silva? Bisping has always been able to beat certain people in the middleweight division and even the light heavyweight division, but it's just when he comes across, shall we say, the elite, he seems to stumble. Luke Rockhold, Vitor Belfort, Dan Henderson, Evans, Rashad Evans. There's those type of guys, so there's no shame in losing against those guys. But I think Bisping now is at a stage in his career, he's 36. Let's see what he can do. So I'm going to get onto my little predictions here, and I'm going to start off with the prelim card. I'm not going to do all the prelims, but I'm just going to say a few people. The Norman Park and Rustam Kabilov. I don't know how you say that guy's name really. This is an interesting little fight. I've seen Rustam fight Ben Henderson. Didn't seem that long ago. He's only 29, 5'9". Got a record of 20 fights, 17 wins and 3 losses. Does he train? Where does he train at? Okay, Matt Winklejohn. So he's at the Jackson Winklejohn gym. Okay, so he's lost 2 in a row at the moment, right? Benson Henderson. And that went into the 4th round. Benson Henderson is really a bit of a decision fighter, but he's a fun fighter. And he lost against Adriano Martins via split decision, so that could probably have gone either way. But before that, he won 3 in a row in the UFC and beating Jorge Masvidal, so he deserves a lot of credit for that. And that was a fight of a night performance. He's against Norman Park tonight. Norman Park's 29 years old. He's 5'11", so he's got the height advantage. He has a MMA record of 26 fights, 21 wins and 4 losses. He was one of the guys that actually offered to fight Conor McGregor, so huge respect. Okay, so he's been in the UFC since 2012. He actually won the Ultimate Fighter, the Smashers tournament. I actually watched that. That's actually pretty cool to watch, actually, Beat Colin Fletcher in that. And then he went on, a good little winning streak, get a draw. And then he lost 2 in a row. He lost against Gleison Tibau, a split decision. And Gleison Tibau recently pissed lava. And he's been banned. I don't know if it's for 2-3 years or whatever it is. And Gleison, if you look at Gleison and you look how big he is outside of the cage, you look how much weight he can cut, it's near enough a miracle that he can do that. And I think anybody without a brain will get suspicions or suspicious of how he can do that, and is he taking anything to do that. So he's recently been banned for a couple of years, whatever it is. I don't know all the information. So can you class that as a loss? It depends how you look at it. Then he lost against Trinaldo, split decision. He won his last fight via decision, so he's got a good solid record. I think in his mind, though, he probably would have finished more people, but this is going to be an interesting fight. I'm gonna go with Norman Park in this because I think he's a really tough guy. I think he's a tough kid, and we'll see. This will be a big win if he gets it though. Some other guys in this. Okay, David Grant. I remember David Grant on The Ultimate Fighter, and I think he was on it when Misha Tate and Ronda Rousey were the coaches. And he's got a lot of potential. For some reason, I haven't got a Wikipedia page, but this guy can fight. He's got something about him, so I'm going to go with him against Marlon Vera. David Grant can fight. I don't know if he's had a long break or something, but I haven't seen him around in a long time, or I don't know if I've not heard about him fighting or something. But he can fight, and I'm going to go with him. In the featherweight division, we've got Mike Wilkinson against Makwan Amerikani. And this Makwan Amerikani, he's got something about him actually. He's a good looking guy. 27, Mr. Finland. 5'10", 145. Okay, he's got a MMA record of 14 fights, 12 wins, 2 losses. Okay, let's have a look. So since he lost against Adam Ward, and he lost earlier on in his career, but since coming into the UFC, he's looked very impressive, winning both of his opponents in the first round. There seems to be something about him where he could be potentially like a bit of a star. So I like the look of him. Against Mike Wilkinson though. Mike Wilkinson, 28, 5'8", 10 fights, 9 wins, 1 loss. Last time he fought in 2014. And I remember that he knocked out Nicholas Backstrom, and this Backstrom guy was actually being touted as a bit of a tasty fighter. Remember him? I think looks like he should be on Vikings, the TV show. 6 foot and at 145. I mean, that's pretty crazy, really. I remember Mike knocked him Sparko, so that was an impressive win. But I'd like to go with Mike Wilkinson because he's my fellow countryman. But I'm going to go with Amerikani. He's got something about him. So I'm going to go on to the actual main card now with my predictions. First of all, it's Francisco Rivera against Brad Pickett. Big fan of Brad Pickett. I remember watching him in Cage Rage so many years back with his hat on. He's 37 now, Brad. I'm going to call him Mike Pickett there. So many mics. 5'6". He's been in quite a lot of the lower weight divisions, lightweight, featherweight, flyweight, bantamweight. So he knows how to cut a bit of weight, doesn't he? 35 fights, 24 wins, and 11 losses. So he's been around a bit, as Brad. 3 losses in a row now. But in those losses, he's looked, they've been decent fights. It's not like he's been getting his ass kicked. He got knocked out in his last fight. That was really good fight, and he was against the younger guy, Thomas Almeida. And at first he rocked Thomas, but Almeida just landed a crazy ass knee from the Matrix and knocked Brad out. But he's got a decent record in the UFC. He's got a decent record. So if he can get a win here, he's back on track, and I really hope he does because he's a very nice guy, Brad. Francisco Rivera is 34, 5'9". He's got the height advantage. 17 fights, 11 wins, 5 losses. Last time out, he lost against John Lineker. No shame in that. John Lineker's a little beast. But he's got a good record in the UFC, has to be said. He's lost against Faber and against Mitsugaki. But in this fight, I'm going to go with Brad Pickett. I've got to go with Brad Pickett. I think he's going to land a knockout punch. I've just got this feeling. So let's do this, Brad. Next of all, in the welterweight division, is Tom Breeze against Nakamura. And Tom Breeze is a young guy, 24, 6'3", so he's really tall for the welterweight division. And he's got a clean record, 9 fights, 9 wins. Last time out, he beat Kafal Pendred. And Kafal Pendred, you've got to say, quite a lot of people talks a lot of shit about that guy, because he got decision wins and maybe he didn't win those fights. But but he was tough, and he was actually a fun fighter. He didn't have the best stand up in the world, but he was a fun fighter to watch, in my opinion. He seemed a little bit reckless in there, so that's what I like to see at times. Um, so I think Cathal, he retired last year. I think he deserves a lot of respect. He done well for himself, and especially he was one of the first fighters from Ireland to really get into the UFC. So well done, Cathal. You've done well for yourself. Happy retirement. Um, but he's going to be against Nakamura now, Tom Breeze. So he's fought in the BAMA organisation in England, and that's got some tasty fights on that on those cards. So he's done well for himself there. Nakamura, on the other hand, is a bit of a Japanese legend. 31-year-old, 5'11", 40 fights, 31 wins, 9 losses. Or was it 6 losses, 2 draws, 1 no contest? Sorry about that. Okay, let's look at this guy's record. So early on in his career, he was flying through people. And then he got into the UFC, and then he lost against Brock Larson. For some reason, that name always makes me laugh. I don't know why. Brock Larson. I always think of Brock Lesnar. Lost against Drew Fickett. And Drew Fickett was a bit of a murderer back in the day. He lost against Rob Emerson. Beat Adriano Martins, who's currently in the UFC. And he got a decent record again on the road. And now he's back in the UFC, because quite a lot of these Japanese guys, they come into the UFC, and these Americans get hold of them and they're like, oh shit, just man strength, drag them around, manhandle them. And it's well known that the Japanese fighters, they don't cut a lot of weight. So basically, if they're fighting at, say, 170, they're probably walking around at 170 in everyday life. So some of these big, giant gorilla Americans, they're like, if they're fighting at 170, they're probably at 200 pound when they're walking around, eating KFC and shit. So they grab hold of him, and they're in a different world. So he's going to be against Tom Breeze. I'm going to go with Tom Breeze in this. Seems very good. He seems like he's got some potential, put it that way. In the co-main event, we've got Gegard Mousasi against Tyrese Lates. I'm watching the Countdown Show, if you want to call it that. I know they've got all different names, like Embedded, Countdown Show, whatever it may be. But Lates seems a really nice guy. And I'll tell you something, I know you can't say these things these days because people are crazy as fuck and weird, but he's got a really cute daughter. She's like a typical girl, and just like a daddy's girl, really adorable. Let's have a look at his record. I remember him back in the day in the UFC, way back when, 6'1". He's had 30 fights, 25 wins, 5 losses. Okay, so I want to look at his earlier UFC career. Okay, so he lost against Brian Campman, then he beat Pete Sell, Floyd Sword, what name? Ryan Jensen, Nate Marquardt, Drew McFedries. I remember Drew McFedries, he had like a crazy knockout punch him. Then he got a title shot against Anderson Silva at UFC 9-7. I remember staying up to watch that. Lost via decision, no shame in that. And then he lost against Sakara via split decision, so that could have gone either way. Beat Dean Lister, that's a good feather in your cap, because Dean Lister is just a beast on the ground. Beat Jesse Taylor. They lost against Matt Harwich, and that's Matt Harwich's biggest win of his career, but he's a good submission guy. Then he went on the road again, getting some good wins, beat Matt Harwich, so he avenged that loss. Then he got back into the UFC at 163, beating Tom Watson. Then he beat Ed Ehrman, Trevor Smith, Francis Carmont, then Tim Boach, and then he lost against Michael Bisping, which was a really close fight, and I thought if Lates actually went to get it to the ground a little bit more, he could have won that fight. I don't know why he was standing up with Michael. I ain't got a clue really. He should have took it to the ground straight away. But this guy's a very good fighter and a very nice man. I really like him. I just like his personality. Gegard Mousasi on the other hand. I'm just going to back up onto the fight card page. Okay, Mousasi. This guy, I think if the zombie apocalypse happened, I think he'd just be walking proper chilled out. He's got a real... He's different, put it that way. He's sort of got like a bit of a Roy McDonald personality without that maniac serial killer twist. You know what I mean? But I've always been a fan of Masashi since he was in like Strike Force and he was fighting in Japan. Only 30-year old, so he's been fighting for a long time. He's still very young, 6'2". He's fought at light heavyweight in the past. Got a good kickboxing record. He's had 45 fights, 37 wins, 6 losses, and 2 draws. He's got a decent amateur boxing career as well. 13 fights, 12 wins, and 1 loss. Let's have a look at this guy's career because he's fought so many different people. Okay, he's lost recently against Hall, and some people will say all sorts of crazy stuff like, "Oh, he's not the same person anymore." But if Hall spinning back kicks you on the chin, it's going to be able to come back from that if he lands that kick. It's his signature, It's like Dan Henderson landing the H-bomb on you. It's can you recover from that or not? And obviously Masashi didn't recover. There's no shame in that. I personally feel he should have had a little bit longer off after losing like that. I think he should have come back in, like, say, the summertime, but that's my personal opinion. But looking back on his career back in the day, he's beat some characters. Hector Lombard. And Hector Lombard in Pride was probably taking all sorts of crazy stuff. Beat, I think that's Cyborg, as in the female Cyborg's husband, and he's a crazy fighter. Dennis Kang, and Dennis Kang back in the day was one of the best fighters in the world, believe it or not. Melvin Manhoef, and who wants to fight that guy really? Either going to knock him out or get knocked out. Beat Jacare, beat Mark Hunt, and this guy's fighting at middleweight. Beat Mark Hunt, Sobral, Sokaju, Gary Goodridge, lost against King Mo. God, King Mo, if that guy could get his shit together, King Mo can be so good. He's such a guy that hasn't fulfilled his potential, in my opinion. He's so good. Jacob Pride, Keith Jardine. Always beat OSP. Okay, that's a good win. Mike Kyle. Okay, then he come into the UFC. He lost against Machida, which was an interesting fight. Beat Mark Munoz quickly, finished him in the first round. Lost against Jacare. Jacare looked a beast in that fight. Then he beat Dan Henderson and Costas Philippou, and then he lost against Rai Hall. So this was a really important fight for him. I'm going to go with Masashi in this, even though I want Ladies to win. This is going to be an interesting fight, 100%. And I could see either of them winning, but I will go with Masashi. He's such a pro. Okay, and in the main event of the evening, we've got Anderson Silva versus Michael Bisping. And Anderson Silva, I'll go onto his page quick. Anderson Silva, just one of the best fighters of all time for many different reasons, in my opinion. I think that his main strength, in my mind, is the way he can read another fighter. He sort of scans them, like in the first minute or two. He sort of scans the fighter. He's looking at them and seeing their movements. He calculates their movements, and then let's see what we can do from there. And he can dispatch of them if he wants to. It seems in the past, when I'd watch his fights, especially in the earlier days, like before Fox and everything like that, I just always had this sense about Anderson that he could finish someone when he wanted to. And sometimes he didn't want to because he wanted to put a show on for the fans. And sometimes he'd do some daft shit, like he'd be dancing around. And I remember he tried to humiliate Damien Maia in, I think they're in Dubai. Sort of just walked around and were humiliating him, saying stuff to him. I didn't really like that. But I mean, man to man, if you can humiliate another man who you don't like, that's pretty not too bad, is it? So Anderson 6'2", fought at middleweight and light heavyweight. Had a great success at light heavyweight. I always thought to myself that he'd move up to light heavyweight and try and get the belt there. I always thought that back in the day, but he never did. He's had 40 fights, 33 wins, 6 losses, and I think he'll like a no disqualification and no contest. Oh God, he's got 5 children. Each normal. He's been in a couple of films as well. Never Surrender, Werbs, Tapped Out. I'll have to watch them. Okay, so his record don't look so good these days. You know, no contest against Nick Diaz for whatever he was doing. You know, I mean, these guys. Okay, originally a unanimous decision win for Silva, overturned after he tested positive for Dranstonolone, I think that's how you say it, and androsterone. Sounds like Sylvester Stallone. Um, Diaz also tested positive for marijuana. I mean, come on, guys. God, who cares? Um, so he tested positive for these things. You know, Michael Bisping, as I said, has been very vocal about this. And I can understand that. You know, if you're a clean fighter, you know, if you're a legit clean fighter and you're about to fight a guy that's tested positive for a banned substance, you're going to be a bit pissed off and you're going to try and use that for your advantage. I understand that. You know, if I was a UFC fighter, MMA fighter, amateur, kickboxing, boxing, I'd never touch anything, me, because personally, you know, I can sort of understand people taking things for, you know, to try to recover from injuries. I actually do understand that 100%. Um, but it's like if they're trying to take these things for, you know, to damage someone. That's where it, like, really I draw the line. It's in an MMA or any, you know, combat sport. It's very easily for these guys to end up like a cabbage. You know, get brain damage, even die. You know, so if someone's taking some crazy shit, and that person, their opponent, ends up dead, and they test positive for that, for whatever it may be that's banned, they're gonna look fucking terrible, you know, in court, in the media, in life. So, you know, if I was a fighter of any caliber, I'd never take anything, because I'd like to feel that I could do certain things without having to take these things. You know, I'd feel like I cheated. Put it that way. If Anderson come out though and basically said, "Listen, I snapped my leg in the octagon in front of many million of people who are watching, and the people in the crowd. I'm nearly 40, because I think you're 39 at the time. I'm nearly 40. I needed to recover from this. I was in horrific pain, because that wouldn't have been a walk in the park. Put it that way, he'd have been in agony every day for a long time, which he said he was taking painkillers. You know, in agony. I needed to recover. I needed to earn some money before I retire for my family, because I've got 5 kids. I want them to, you know, have the nice things in life." I think people would be like, "Okay, then. You know, I understand." But, you know, these stories that have come out, these might be true though. You know, they might be true. Um, so many things that could be contain these weird substances and things that are banned. So you've got to be careful. These fighters need to be very careful now, very careful. But you've also had other fighters who've took all these supplements for all their career, and they've never tested positive for anything. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. It just rings a bell where he snapped his leg and all of a sudden he's testing positive for something. I don't think Anderson has ever taken anything to, you know, for his performance. I think he took something for his recovery. That's my personal opinion. So, okay, you know, Anderson's just got an amazing record. I think everybody knows who he's beat. Let's look at Michael Bisping though. Okay, Michael is 36-year-old, 6'1", he's fought at light heavyweight. He's had 34 fights, 27 wins, 7 losses. Okay, so he's currently on a 2-fight winning streak. CB Dollaway and Leighty's both are good wins, because CB Dollaway were knocking people out and, you know, looking very dangerous, a good wrestler as well. If you look at Mike's, you know, career, he's lost against Luke Rockhold. He's a champion now. Tim Kennedy, who's just a beast, and he used his main advantage, which was the wrestling. He lost against TRT Vitor and TRT Vitor, in my opinion, could beat anybody in Brazil in the first round. Put it that way. That guy was just fucking insane, spinning back kicks and a crazy haircut. Lost against Chael Sonnen. I thought Michael won that fight. Personally did, and Chael Sonnen's also tested positive for things before Annie. Let's not forget that. I've got a long memory. Vanderlei Silva, a guy that ran away from a fucking test. He scarpered out the back door, weren't seen for dust. Dan Henderson, I've got all the respect for Dan Henderson in the world, but he was taking, TRT. And Rashad Evans, at the time, back in those days, were, a potential 205 champion, and he did become a 205 champion. So the guys, Bisping has lost against are legit guys, and guys that have taken certain things. Let's just be honest here. So he's going to be against Anderson Silva now. Both at a crossroads in their career. Both need a win to potentially get a title shot. I've been such a big supporter of Bisping for so many years. I can't really go against him now. If I had a shotgun to my head, would I say otherwise? Maybe. But I'm going to go with Michael Bisping. I've sort of always said that Michael can compete against these guys, so I'm not going to say he can't now. So I'm going to go with Michael Bisping. I think he's going to beat Anderson Silva. That's my prediction. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the fights, and have a good weekend and be safe.